All right, let's open the file. Today, we're running an intelligence brief on one of the most secretive and fastest-growing industries on the entire planet. We're talking about the multi-billion-dollar business of privatized warfare. And believe me, this isn't science fiction. It's a new reality where military force has become a commodity for sale to the highest bidder. And this all came into terrifyingly sharp focus during one brutal firefight in the Syrian desert.
Now this quote, this isn't from some hypothetical war game scenario. It is a stone-cold analysis of a real battle that went down in Syria back in 2018. It was a vicious, 4-hour firefight that pitted U.S. Special Forces against a completely new kind of enemy. An enemy that basically signaled a fundamental shift in who gets to wage war in the 21st century.
So, to really understand what happened in that battle, first, you've got to completely erase the old image you have of a soldier of fortune. You see, the modern mercenary isn't some lone wolf with a rifle anymore. There's something far more organized, way more powerful, and deeply integrated into the global economy.
What you're looking at here is a fundamental transformation. I mean, we've gone from the lone individual to a global institution. On the left, you've got that classic image, right? The mercenary, all about his personal payday. But on the right, that's the private military and security company, a PMSC. These are full-blown corporations. They have boards of directors, HR departments, and strategic business plans. They don't just sell soldiers anymore. They sell security solutions on a massive scale, from intelligence analysis all the way to direct combat operations.
And this brings us right back to that battle in Syria. At a place called Deir el-Zor, just 30 elite American commandos looked up and found themselves under attack by 500 mercenaries from Russia's Wagner Group. And listen, these weren't just security guards. This was a combined arms force, rolling up with T-72 tanks and heavy artillery. Now, the Americans managed to hold them off with overwhelming air power. But the message? The message was crystal clear. Corporate armies are now capable of challenging even the world's most powerful state militaries on the battlefield.
So the big question is, how did we get here? How did an industry that was basically outlawed in the 19th century just reemerge as a dominant force in modern conflict? Well, the answer lies in the geopolitical rubble of the Cold War.
Just look at this number for a second. Between 1991 and 1995, as the Soviet Union was collapsing, the U.S. military, just the U.S. alone, cut its active duty force by 400,000 soldiers. And globally, that number was in the millions. All of a sudden, you had this unprecedented oversupply of highly trained, experienced, and frankly, unemployed military professionals. An entire labor pool for a brand new kind of industry was just born.
And at the very same time, this security gap opened up. You see, states, especially in the West, they still wanted to intervene in conflicts around the world. But their own public, they had very little appetite for casualties or long deployments. So PMSCs offered this perfect, if controversial, solution. They offered the ability to project military power with plausible deniability and, crucially, with zero flag-draped coffins coming home.
The industry's evolution was just incredibly rapid, and it happened in these key stages. It really kicks off in the early 90s with firms like Executive Outcomes down in Africa. Then, in Yugoslavia, they become this clever tool to get around UN arms embargoes. But the real explosion? Man, that happens after 9/11. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan acted like rocket fuel, pumping billions of dollars into these companies. Of course, incidents like the 2007 Nicer Square massacre by Blackwater contractors exposed the incredibly dark side. But the industry's growth? It was just unstoppable. And it all culminated in that 2018 battle in Syria.
To truly wrap your head around the scale of this new industry, you just have to follow the money. And I'm telling you, the numbers are absolutely staggering.
By 2004, and think about that, that was a full 2 decades ago, the estimated annual revenue for the global PMSC industry had already hit $100 billion. That's more than the entire GDP of many countries.
And it has only grown since then. Just to put it in perspective, in fiscal year 2019 alone, the U.S. Department of Defense, and that's just one government, although they are the industry's biggest client, spent $404 billion on contracts. A massive chunk of that goes to companies providing services that used to be exclusively military functions.
And these are some of the names behind those numbers. Blackwater, of course, is the most infamous one. But firms like Vinnell have been around since Vietnam, described by one Pentagon official as, and I quote, our own little mercenary army. From the pioneers like Executive Outcomes to state proxies like Russia's Wagner Group, these companies are now major players on the world stage.
So how do they actually make their money? Well, there are 2 main models. The first is a pretty straightforward fee for service. A government pays a company to, say, guard an embassy or train its troops. Simple enough. But the second model, the one perfected by groups like Wagner, is far more concerning. They trade military muscle for access to a country's natural wealth, gold, diamonds, oil. In this model, they aren't just contractors anymore. They become resource extractors with guns, which creates a very powerful profit motive to keep things unstable.
And this whole business model, it thrives in the shadows, right? In a world of legal ambiguity. That raises a really critical question. Have we accidentally created an industry that operates completely above the law?
This quote from a U.S. government official, it's just astonishingly blunt. It explicitly says that private contractors are used as a tool to get around democratic oversight and national laws. It's not a loophole, it's a feature of the system. It's a way for the executive branch to conduct foreign policy without any real accountability.
And this system of impunity, it's really built on 4 key pillars. First, the legal definition of a mercenary is so incredibly narrow, it's almost useless. Second, these contractors exist in this legal no man's land. They're not subject to a military court-martial, but it's nearly impossible to prosecute them in civilian courts for things they do overseas. Third, they give governments the ultimate shield, plausible deniability. And finally, the whole system is greased by that infamous revolving door between the Pentagon and the corporate boardroom.
And the names involved, it's a who's who of the national security establishment. A former chief of staff of the Army becomes president of a major PMSC. The Pentagon's inspector general, the guy who's supposed to be the watchdog, becomes an executive at Blackwater's parent company. A former head of the CIA's counterterrorism center becomes Blackwater's vice chair. These aren't just coincidences. This is a system that deliberately fuses state power with corporate profit, and it ensures those massive contracts just keep on flowing.
So what does this all mean for the future? I mean, we're not just looking at a new type of company here. We are looking at an entirely new paradigm for global conflict.
And this, right here, is the most profound consequence of all. For nearly 400 years, since the Peace of Westphalia, the modern world has been built on one core principle. Only states have the legitimate right to wage large-scale war. That monopoly is now broken. The ability to field an army is no longer a unique power of nations. It is a service that can be bought.
And the consequences of this are already staring us in the face. We see human rights abuses go unpunished. We see conflicts that are probably prolonged because instability is profitable. We have less and less transparency about who's actually fighting our wars and why they're fighting them. And we face a future where any sufficiently wealthy corporation or even an individual could potentially field their own private army, challenging the power of states themselves.
And that leaves us with one final, deeply unsettling question. The nature of power has always been tied to the control of military force. If that force is now available on the open market, what does that mean for the global balance of power? Who really gets to decide the future? Nations and their citizens, or simply the highest bidder?
So while markets rise and fall, systems like this quietly move billions behind the scenes, hidden from the public, hidden from scrutiny, and sometimes hidden from the law itself. Because in global finance, the most powerful forces are rarely the most visible. And this is just one of the systems used by the unseen elite.